The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Alistair, a 44-year-old software engineer in Seattle, stared blankly at the code on my monitor, the lines blurring into meaningless symbols. My life, once a neatly structured algorithm, had crashed, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and pain. It had all started subtly, almost imperceptibly. My wife, Bronwyn, a vibrant and successful marketing executive, had begun working later, attending more conferences, and generally becoming more distant. We'd been married for 15 years, a seemingly solid partnership built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and I thought unwavering love. Now a coldness had settled between us, a palpable tension that hung in the air like a shroud. I dismissed it at first. Bronwyn was under pressure at work, I reasoned. These things happen. Marriages ebb and flow. But the unease persisted, gnawing at my insides like a persistent virus. Her phone became her constant companion, clutched tightly even during dinner, its screen angled away from my prying eyes. Her laughter, once so freely offered, became strained, reserved for someone else, someone I wasn't. The first real sign, the crack in the foundation, came in the form of a misplaced receipt. I was tidying up her purse, something I rarely did when I found it, a small, crumpled piece of paper from a restaurant I didn't recognize. La Petite Fleur, it read, with a Seattle address I'd never seen before. The date was last Tuesday, a night Bronwyn had told me she was working late at the office. My heart lurched. A cold dread washed over me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a business dinner. Maybe she'd gone with colleagues after work. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to sprout, its tendrils wrapping around my heart and squeezing the life out of it. I decided to do some digging, a decision that would ultimately shatter my world. I started small, subtly questioning Bronwyn about her whereabouts on Tuesday evenings. Her answers were vague, evasive, laced with a nervousness I'd never witnessed before. "Just work stuff, Alistair," she'd say, avoiding eye contact. "You know how it is." But I didn't know. I didn't know what it was like to lie to the person you supposedly loved, to betray their trust so casually. So I took the next step, the one that felt like a descent into a dark abyss. I checked our credit card statements, and there it was, a charge from La Petite Fleur on the night in question, for a sum that suggested a romantic dinner for two. The evidence was mounting, undeniable, yet I still clung to a sliver of hope, a desperate plea that there was some innocent explanation. I decided to confront Bronwyn, to give her a chance to come clean, to salvage what was left of our marriage. "Bronwyn," I said one evening, my voice trembling slightly, "I need to ask you something about last Tuesday." She looked up from her phone, her eyes widening slightly. "What is it, Alistair?" "I found a receipt from a restaurant, La Petite Fleur. You said you were working late that night." Her face paled. For a moment she was silent, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. Then she launched into a flurry of excuses, a tangled web of lies that unraveled before my very eyes. "It was a business dinner," she stammered. "With a client. I didn't want to bore you with the details." "A business dinner for two at a romantic French restaurant," I challenged, my voice rising. "And why didn't you mention it before?" She faltered, her eyes welling up with tears. "Okay, fine," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't a client, it was a friend. We were just catching up." "A friend," I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "A male friend, and you didn't think to tell me about it?" She remained silent, her head bowed in shame. The truth hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I knew with a certainty that pierced my soul that she was lying. This wasn't just a friendly dinner. This was something more, something illicit, something that threatened to destroy everything we had built together. I couldn't bring myself to ask the question I desperately needed answered. The fear of confirmation was too great. So I retreated, burying my pain and suspicion deep inside, hoping against hope that it would all go away, but it didn't. The distance between us continued to grow, the tension becoming unbearable. I found myself obsessively checking her phone, scrutinizing her every move, consumed by a paranoia that threatened to overwhelm me. I was a shadow of my former self, a man haunted by the specter of betrayal. Then came the day that changed everything, the day the dam finally broke. I had taken a day off work to try and reconnect with Bronwyn, to salvage our relationship. I suggested a walk in Discovery Park, a place we used to frequent in our early days. She reluctantly agreed, but her heart clearly wasn't in it. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone, her eyes darting around nervously. As we walked along the bluff, overlooking the Puget Sound, I noticed a familiar figure in the distance. A man tall and handsome with a confident swagger. He was walking towards us, his eyes fixed on Bronwyn. As he drew closer, I recognized him. It was Gareth, a colleague of Bronwyn's, a man I had met several times at office parties. He was charming, charismatic, and I had always suspected, a little too interested in my wife. Bronwyn's face flushed as Gareth approached. "Oh, hi, Gareth," she said, her voice higher than usual. "What are you doing here? Just taking a walk," he replied, his eyes lingering on Bronwyn's face. "I didn't realize you were here." The air crackled with unspoken tension. I stood there feeling like an intruder in my own life, watching as Bronwyn and Gareth exchanged glances, their eyes conveying a message I couldn't decipher. "Well, we should get going," I said, my voice strained. "We have things to do." Bronwyn hesitated, her eyes flickering between me and Gareth. "Actually, Alistair," she said, "I was just telling Gareth about the new project we're working on. Maybe we could all grab a coffee and discuss it." My blood ran cold. This was it, the moment of truth. I knew with absolute certainty that something was going on between Bronwyn and Gareth. The way they looked at each other, the way they spoke, the unspoken connection that hung in the air, it was all too obvious. "No, Bronwyn," I said, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "We are not going to grab a coffee with Gareth. We are going home." Now she glared at me, her face contorted with anger. "Don't tell me what to do, Alistair," she snapped. "I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions." "Not when those decisions involve betraying me," I retorted, my voice rising. "I know what's going on between you and Gareth. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise." Her face crumpled. Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's not what you think, Alistair," she pleaded. "Oh, really?" I challenged. "Then tell me, Bronwyn, tell me what it is." She remained silent, her head bowed in shame. Gareth stood there, looking uncomfortable, his eyes darting around nervously. "I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Then I guess that says it all," I said, my voice filled with a pain I had never known before. "I'm done, Bronwyn. I can't do this anymore." I turned and walked away, leaving Bronwyn and Gareth standing there, alone in their betrayal. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The following weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and shattered dreams. The divorce was messy, acrimonious, and deeply painful. Bronwyn denied the affair at first, but eventually the truth came out. She had been seeing Gareth for months, meeting him for secret lunches, weekend getaways, and late-night rendezvous. She claimed it was just a fling, a moment of weakness. But I knew better. This was more than just a casual affair. This was a calculated betrayal, a deliberate act of infidelity that had shattered my trust and destroyed my marriage. The pain was unbearable. I lost weight, couldn't sleep, and struggled to focus on my work. I felt like a part of me had died, leaving a gaping hole in my soul. I questioned everything I had ever believed in, everything I had ever held dear. Was our marriage a lie? Had Bronwyn ever truly loved me? Was I simply not enough? As the divorce proceedings dragged on, I learned more about Bronwyn's affair. Gareth was married too, with 2 young children. His wife Aeliana was devastated when she found out. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, knowing exactly what she was going through. One day I received a message from Aeliana. She wanted to meet, to talk. I hesitated at first, but eventually I agreed. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, both of us looking weary and heartbroken. We talked for hours, sharing our stories of betrayal, our pain, our anger. We discovered that Bronwyn and Gareth had been planning to leave their spouses and start a new life together. They had even been discussing moving to another city, starting a new business. As we talked, a sense of camaraderie developed between us. We had both been victims of the same deception, the same callous disregard for our feelings. We were united in our pain, our anger, and our desire for justice. Together, Aeliana and I decided to expose Bronwyn and Gareth's affair. We gathered evidence, emails, text messages, photos, and presented it to their respective spouses, their families, and their employers. The fallout was swift and devastating. Gareth was fired from his job, ostracized by his friends and family, and faced with a messy divorce. Bronwyn's reputation was tarnished. Her career prospects diminished. Their dreams of a new life together crumbled before their very eyes. I won't pretend that it brought me joy to see them suffer, but there was a sense of satisfaction in knowing that they had faced the consequences of their actions, that they had been held accountable for their betrayal. In the aftermath of the divorce, I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. It was a long and arduous process, filled with pain, loneliness, and self-doubt. But slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I focused on my work, reconnected with old friends, and discovered new hobbies. I started running, taking long walks in nature, and practicing meditation. I learned to forgive myself, to let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. I also forged a strong bond with Aeliana. We became close friends, supporting each other through the difficult times. We found solace in our shared experience, our mutual understanding of the pain of betrayal. One evening, months after the divorce, Aeliana and I were having dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Puget Sound. We were laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. As I looked at Aeliana, I realized that something had shifted. There was a spark between us, a connection that went beyond friendship. We started dating, tentatively at first, both of us scarred by our past experiences. But slowly, gradually, we began to trust each other, to open our hearts to the possibility of love again. It wasn't easy. We both carried baggage from our previous marriages, insecurities and fears that threatened to sabotage our relationship. But we worked through it, communicating openly and honestly, supporting each other every step of the way. Eventually, we fell in love. It was a different kind of love than I had experienced before, a love born out of pain and loss, a love grounded in mutual respect, understanding, and unwavering support. Aeliana and I got married a year later, in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. I had found love again, after enduring the most devastating betrayal imaginable. Bronwyn, on the other hand, did not fare so well. Her relationship with Gareth fizzled out after a few months. He was a user, a manipulator who had only been interested in her for her money and her connections. Once those were gone, he moved on to someone else, leaving Bronwyn alone and regretful. I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling. She had lost her job, her friends, and her self-respect. She was living in a small apartment, working a dead-end job, and drowning her sorrows in alcohol. I felt a pang of pity for her, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. She had made her choices, and she had to live with the consequences. I, on the other hand, had found happiness again. I had learned from my mistakes, grown as a person, and emerged from the ashes of betrayal stronger and more resilient than ever before. I had found love again, not in the way I expected, but in a way that was deeper, more meaningful, and more fulfilling than anything I had ever known. My life is not perfect. I still have moments of doubt, moments of insecurity, moments when the pain of the past resurfaces. But I have learned to cope with those moments, to embrace the present, and to look forward to the future with hope and optimism. I am Alistair, and this is my story of betrayal, loss, and ultimately, redemption. I hope my story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that betrayal can happen to anyone, but that it is possible to overcome even the most devastating heartbreak and find happiness again. Remember, even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. Never give up on yourself and never stop believing in the power of love. One day, years later, I received a letter from Bronwyn. It was a long, rambling apology, filled with regret and remorse. She admitted that she had made a terrible mistake, that she had thrown away something precious, and that she would never forgive herself for what she had done. She asked for my forgiveness, not for her sake, but for her own. She said that she couldn't move on with her life until she had made amends for her past actions. I read the letter with a mixture of emotions: anger, sadness, and a flicker of pity. But there was also a sense of closure, a feeling that I could finally put the past behind me. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't feel the need to. I had already moved on. I had found happiness again. And that was all that mattered. My story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, and the enduring power of love. It is a story of betrayal, but also a story of hope. A story of loss, but also a story of redemption. A story of pain, but ultimately a story of healing. I am Alistair, and I have survived. And if I can, so can you. Remember to cherish the love you have, to protect it, and to never take it for granted. Because in the end, love is all that matters. And if you are ever betrayed, remember that you are not alone. There is hope, there is healing, and there is love waiting for you on the other side. Never give up. Never lose hope. And never stop believing in the power of love. This is my story. And I hope it inspires you to live your own life to the fullest, with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith in the power of the human spirit.